What's up, everybody? Ryan Thomas here of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, coming to you live tonight, Friday night, December 22nd. And in case you don't know, Bright, starring Will Smith and Joel Egerton, is out on Netflix. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it seems like every time I go on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, I get an ad for this movie that I have no interest in watching. Thought I would plug that and kind of, hardy har, jokes on that, to start the show today. But to say the least, I wanted to hop on here on the mic tonight and talk about the 2018 NFL Draft, easily the most important draft in recent memory. And I could honestly go out on a limb here and say that this draft is the most important draft in Buffalo Bills history since I have been a young lad. In the history of the drought, we could say. This is the most important draft that the Buffalo Bills have ever had. We have 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a third-round pick, 5 selections inside the first 3 rounds. And obviously now that we're moving closer to the end of the season, Buffalo stands at 8-6. They got a big game coming up against the New England Patriots this weekend at Foxborough. A winnable game, actually. More so winnable than that of years past because there are some vulnerabilities in New England's game. And there are some pluses to Buffalo's game as a team. Solid secondary, great run game. Something that two things that could help them versus a team led by Tom Brady, obviously. Keep Tom Brady off the field with the run, and obviously being that the secondary is so improved from 2016 to 2017 this season, that bodes well for Buffalo. Just those 2 lone facts right there. So what would I do if I'm sitting in the GM chair? There's so much talk of the obvious. The obvious is, obviously on the Thomas Take, I've talked a lot about Tyrod Taylor the last 2 years, I should say, since the podcast really started 2 years ago. But prior to that, obviously writing articles and stuff for My Fantasy Sports Talk and stuff that I've worked on over the years. I've talked about how Tyrod Taylor is not the guy. And my most recent article, I talked about the fact that the Buffalo Bills need a real quarterback. That was my most recent article on rocksportsreport.com. And I gave a few options. If you haven't checked that out, check it out. But just for, the sake of the matter, I'll talk about what the Buffalo Bills currently have in Tyrod Taylor. So 2015 was a season that I was very surprised by Tyrod. I thought he played very well. But the last 2 years, 2016, 2017, have not been up to par, in my humble opinion. So being that the Buffalo Bills have had one of the worst 3 passing attacks the last few seasons, that Tyrod has been the starter the last 3 years, I think now, beyond 2017 or heading into the 2018 offseason, now is the time that the Buffalo Bills need to move on from Tyrod Taylor. And one of the options I talked about was the 2018 NFL Draft. Just to name a few guys that will be, of high interest to a lot of teams in the draft: Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, just to name some of the quarterbacks. For, about a couple weeks ago, I thought that it was necessary that the Bills trade up for a quarterback. But as these weeks have gone by, I'm starting to really think that is not such a good idea. And part of that is because that the Bills have won. They've been winning. They beat the Indianapolis Colts. They beat the Miami Dolphins. it's not so much that they beat them, it's the way they beat them. Dominant run game. It's obvious that LaShawn McCoy still has more left in the tank. 30, that window is not creeping up on him just yet. He's a special running back, a true Hall of Famer, in my humble opinion. When it's all said and done, at the end of his career, he will be in the Hall of Fame. He should be in the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done. But not only that, we do have pieces on this team on the offensive side of the ball to win now. Kelvin Benjamin, Zay Jones, Jordan Matthews on a contract year, and obviously Charles Clay we still have locked up for the next few years. So, me personally, I think that this team is in a much needed win now mode. We're trying to make the playoffs this year, a year where most people didn't think we would. We realize that we have steadily improved from 2016 under Rex Ryan to 2017 under Sean McDermott, and there's pieces on this team that help us win now. Guys like Trey White, guys like Micah Hyde, guys like the before-mentioned LaShawn McCoy and the receiving core that we have. Really, the only thing holding the Bills back has been their lack of a passing game. And if they could get a veteran quarterback, a guy like Alex Smith, a guy like Nick Foles, I truly believe that is the best cup of tea for the future. Rather than investing high draft selections on a quarterback, or even worse, trading up and foregoing the right to have multiple high draft selections in the first couple rounds, and taking a rookie, which we took last year in the 5th round, mind you, I would rather have them go with a veteran option to work alongside Nathan Peterman, whether that's Foles or Alex Smith. Foles is basically a cheaper version, a younger version of Alex Smith. Alex Smith, the true vet, he might come a little bit pricey depending on the amount of years that you sign him for. So, obviously, when you sign a player to more years, the money is more spread out, which could make him cheaper. Obviously, the money divided annually might be a little bit more if it's a shorter-term contract. So, that being said, what areas would I want the Buffalo Bills to analyze and add on to if they do decide to go in this direction of taking a veteran quarterback? I specifically would want to see Buffalo strengthen both sides of the ball. And what I mean by that is offensive line and defensive line. You look at who the Bills have. They have a problem at left tackle. You have Cody Glenn, who's set to make $14.4 million next year. Way too much money. You have Deion Dawkins, who's filled in pretty admirably for Cody Glenn this season. But he's a rookie this year, and realistically, he's not a true left tackle. He's more of a guard, or at the very least, a right tackle. Richie Incognito is 34 years old. He is a Pro Bowler. He is, as I've stated a ton of times on the Thomas Take Sports podcast, a true stud guard. Eric Wood is getting a little bit older. John Miller has had some injury issues. We've had Vlad Dukas in at right guard. And obviously Jordan Mills is not a right tackle. So there are some offensive line issues in terms of depth and starting deficiencies that the Bills could face next year if they don't address that. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line, it's obvious. You got Kyle Williams, who is getting up there in age. You have Shaq Lawson and Jerry Hughes. You have Eddie Yarborough, who showed some decent things, but is Eddie Yarborough a guy that teams are game planning for? That I truly don't know. Lawson and Hughes are obviously staying. Williams is a question mark as to whether he comes back. So maybe you draft a defensive tackle, to fill that spot. Also, linebacker Lorenzo Alexander, a guy that I truly feel is a high-class individual, a guy that I think is well deserving of this Walter Payton Man of the Year award, being in the final two for it, he is well deserving. I walk into grocery stores locally in Western New York, whether it's Tops or Wegmans or even the Super Walmart, and I see flyers on the wall as I'm walking in and out of the grocery store or shopping center or supermart or whatever the heck you want to call it these days. And I see Lorenzo Alexander on the wall for a meet and greet, and the proceeds go to St. Jude's or Roswell Cancer and Park Institute. A class act model American human being. And I say that with the utmost respect. I truly admire Lorenzo Alexander. He's what a football player should be. A guy that works hard on and off the field, contributes his time and energy to helping the lives of others. True great player and a class act. And I'm happy that he somewhat revived his career here. But he is getting up there in age. And if he wants to be a starter, realistically, he can be a really integral leadership rotational guy for the Buffalo Bills still. But I think the Bills do need an upgrade in terms of just all-around athleticism and playmaking ability at the outside linebacker position. And there's people available for this draft that fit each and every category that I have stated. And I'm not going to give them away yet. I'm not going to tell you who I'm looking at. I'm going to save that for March and April. But I'm looking, and there are guys that are out there that I see fit the bill for the Buffalo Bills, fit my bill, I should say, for the Buffalo Bills, pun intended. And I think that this is a situation where if, let's just say, Alex Smith or Nick Foles come into one Bills drive and start and become the starting quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, we say bye-bye to Tyrod. Tyrod goes back to Baltimore to back up Joe Flacco because no teams are interested in making him the starter. I think with all this capital, with a better cap situation heading into the 2018 offseason than what they had heading into the 2017 offseason, the Bills can realistically not only make the playoffs, but win a playoff game, being that they would actually have a quarterback that can pass the football. Go drive for drive with the guys like Tom Brady, with the guys that they're trying to beat. Does Tyrod Taylor have a chance at going drive for drive with Tom Brady? No, we've seen that. So it's time to look ahead and not only the obvious is the veteran knows the systems of the NFL, reads the defenses, knows the speed of the NFL game. But obviously, helping a guy that I think has a lot of potential in Nate Peterman, despite what all the haters say about Peterman throwing 5 picks and a half, you show me a guy that judges a player based on 1/2 of his NFL career, I'll show you an idiot. I mean, realistically, anyone that is going to judge an NFL player based on 1/2 of his entire NFL career, that's an idiot. That's somebody that has no business even talking about football, let alone watching it. So I'm not going to analyze and chastise Nate Peterman based on the LA Chargers game. He has way more intangibles as a quarterback than Tyrod Taylor, because Tyrod is an athlete, not a quarterback. And we have to move on. And I know we will. And I know I've talked about that a lot, but the time is coming. We're getting towards the end of the season. We got 2 huge weeks against the Patriots and the Dolphins. We're staring at 8-6 in the face. And if you were to ask me right here, right now, what's the one reason you think that they won't make the playoffs? There is only one reason, and that is their quarterback position. We're at a time in the NFL currently where the talent is so small. The talent level is so minuscule in comparison to the 80s and the 90s. People say the game has evolved. No, the game has devolved. The game has made rules to help certain positions evolve. This game is not the same as it was 20, 30 years ago. Ask your dad, ask your grandfather. They'll tell you. And it's not just the old, back in my day story. It's actual fact. You're not seeing teams stay together like they used to. Bring in that veteran, add on both sides of the ball, offensive line, defensive cornerstone positions like defensive end, linebacker, a DN/linebacker type player, and I'll give you the names eventually. But for now, that is what I would do if it were me, if I was Brandon Beane at One Bills Drive. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take.